Olivia's life was a paradox. In the public eye, she was a fortress of power, poised, untouchable, wrapped in wealth and influence. But here, in the dim light of that restaurant, across from Daniel Hayes, she was fragile. And she hated how much she loved it. It had been 3 weeks since that first note, 3 weeks since Daniel had cracked a door in her soul she thought was sealed forever. Every visit to the restaurant now felt less like dining and more like breathing. She would slip away from her world of glass towers and boardroom wars just to sit in table 17, sip coffee, and listen to a man who didn't know her last name, and who, strangely, didn't seem to care. But secrets don't stay buried forever. One rainy Thursday night, Olivia arrived late. The storm outside had left her hair damp, her sweater clinging slightly as she entered the warm air of the restaurant. Daniel noticed her immediately. Not just because he always did, but because she looked different. Exhausted. Haunted. He brought her coffee without asking. Long day. Olivia wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the warmth seep into her chilled fingers. You could say that. I had to sit through 6 hours of people talking without saying anything. Daniel chuckled, sliding into the seat across from her, something he never did unless the place was nearly empty. Tonight, it was. Sounds like politics. Business, she corrected softly, then bit her lip, realizing she might have said too much. But Daniel didn't push. He never pushed. That was what made her keep coming back. He simply nodded, letting the silence breathe. After a moment, Olivia whispered, "Do you ever feel like you're living 2 lives? The one people see, and the one you actually live?" Daniel thought of Emily asleep in the break room, of the mask he wore every day to keep her safe and keep himself strong. He looked at Olivia and saw the flicker of desperation in her eyes. Slowly, he said, "Every single day." Something in her broke then. Not in a destructive way, but like a dam releasing water that had been straining against its walls for years. She told him, carefully, pieces of her truth. Not everything, not yet. But enough. That she worked in a world where people valued money over souls. That she was surrounded by friends who would trade her away for power. That she often felt invisible, despite everyone watching her. Daniel listened the way no one else ever did. His eyes didn't judge. His face didn't calculate. He simply listened. And for Olivia, that was more than she had ever dared hope for. But their quiet world was not without storms. At home, Daniel faced a growing crisis. His rent had gone up. Emily needed new shoes, and her kindergarten fees were overdue. He had been covering shifts, working double, even skipping meals some nights just to make ends meet. But it wasn't enough. One evening, as Emily colored at the small kitchen table, Daniel sat with overdue bills spread out in front of him. His chest tightened with the weight of them. He didn't want Emily to see his fear, but children notice more than they should. "Daddy." Emily's little voice broke through. She held up her crayon drawing, a stick figure of her, him, and a woman with long hair. "Can we have a mommy again someday?" Daniel's throat closed. It had been 3 years since cancer took his wife. He hadn't let himself even dream of love again. He forced a smile. "Maybe someday, sweetheart." That night, when Olivia came to the restaurant, Daniel was quieter than usual. She noticed. Of course she noticed. "You're carrying something heavy tonight," she said softly. He tried to deflect, but she reached across the table, bold, surprising even herself, and touched his hand. "Don't do that. Don't. Hide. Not with me." And Daniel, for reasons he couldn't explain, told her the truth. About Emily. About the bills. About feeling like he was failing as a father even when he was giving everything he had. Olivia's eyes softened in a way that nearly undid him. She wanted, desperately, to tell him who she really was, that she had more money than he could imagine, that she could wipe away his problems with a single check. But she didn't, because she was terrified that if she did, he'd see her differently. So she only whispered, "You're not failing. You're the kind of father most kids only dream of." It was the first time Daniel had cried in years. Just one tear, quickly brushed away. But Olivia saw it, and she would never forget it. Meanwhile, the outside world began to close in. One of Daniel's co-workers, a sharp-eyed young hostess named Megan, started noticing Olivia's frequent visits. She noticed the way Olivia carried herself, her quiet elegance, the way expensive watches slipped beneath her sweater cuffs. Megan had a talent for gossip, and soon whispers spread among the staff. Who is she? One of the line cooks asked. No way, she's just some random customer. Maybe she's a critic, Megan suggested slyly. Or, maybe she's rich. Look at her shoes. That's designer. Daniel dismissed it at first. But when Megan cornered him one night, smirking, and said, "Your mysterious friend," I googled. I think she's Olivia Carter. Daniel's heart dropped. He knew that name. Everyone did. Billionaire. CEO of Carter Industries. One of the most powerful women in the country. He didn't believe it at first. Not until he went home, searched the name, and saw her face staring back at him from countless articles. Glamorous, untouchable, photographed at galas and red carpets. A world so far from his own, it might as well have been another planet. And yet, it was her. Olivia. The woman who drank coffee at table 17. Who laughed at his bad jokes. Who knew Emily's favorite color. Who slipped into his world like she belonged there. For hours, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, staring at her photo on the screen, Emily asleep in the next room. His heart was a storm. She had lied to him. Or maybe not lied, but hidden. And he didn't know what hurt more, the secret itself, or the fact that he had let himself hope. The next time she came to the restaurant, Daniel couldn't look at her the same. His smile was strained, his words clipped. Olivia noticed immediately. What's wrong? She asked quietly. Daniel's jaw tightened. Finally, he said, why didn't you tell me who you are? The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then whispered, because I didn't want you to see me as her. I just wanted you to see me. Daniel laughed bitterly. You think that makes it better? You sit here listening to my struggles while you live in a penthouse. Do you have any idea how that feels? Like some charity case you can pat on the head. Her eyes filled with tears. That's not what this is. Daniel, but he cut her off. I can't do this. His voice cracked. Emily doesn't need fairy tales that disappear when the clock strikes midnight. She needs stability. And I can't risk letting someone into her life who isn't being honest with me. Olivia reached for him, but he stepped back. For the first time, she felt the full weight of her choices crashing down. That night, Olivia left the restaurant without finishing her coffee. And Daniel watched her go, torn between the part of him that wanted to run after her, and the part that knew his daughter's heart was not something he could gamble with. This was the beginning of their breaking point. And neither of them knew if they could survive it. The restaurant had never felt so quiet. Table 17, her table, sat empty, the chair tucked in neatly as though it were waiting for someone who would never return. Daniel wiped it down out of habit, though no one had sat there that night. He didn't know why he did it. Maybe because some part of him hoped that by keeping it ready, she might walk through the door again. But Olivia didn't come back. It had been nearly 2 weeks since the truth had spilled into the open, since he had discovered who she really was. Billionaire. CEO. Heiress to a fortune that spanned empires. Olivia Carter, a name known across newspapers and magazine covers, not just a tired woman sipping coffee in his section of a modest restaurant. And he couldn't get her out of his head. Every night, as he tucked Emily into bed, her small arms wrapped around her stuffed bunny, he heard her little voice echo in his mind. Daddy, is the nice lady coming back? He didn't have an answer. For Olivia, the penthouse was a gilded prison. She moved through rooms of polished marble and glass, her heels clicking against floors that echoed back her solitude. Her kitchen was filled with imported wines and delicacies she never touched. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from investors, board members, socialites, people who wanted her influence, her money, her face at their events. But no one wanted her heart. She hadn't realized how deeply Daniel's words would cut until she was back in her lonely apartment, staring at herself in the mirror. Emily doesn't need fairy tales that disappear when the clock strikes midnight. She needs stability. And I can't risk letting someone into her life who isn't being honest with me. He was right. She hadn't been honest. She had hidden her identity out of fear that he would see her differently, fear that she would lose the only person who seemed to see her as more than her name. And now she had lost him anyway. Meanwhile, Daniel's struggles worsened. The rent was late again. The electricity bill carried a red warning. The restaurant had cut shifts due to slower business, which meant even fewer hours to scrape by. Some nights he skipped dinner just to make sure Emily had enough. Yet Emily, sweet and innocent, still asked about Olivia. "Daddy, maybe she'll come tomorrow," she'd say hopefully, setting an extra place at their tiny kitchen table with her plastic teacups. Daniel's chest tightened every time. He didn't want her to hope for something that might never happen. But deep down, he realized he was hoping too. The breaking point came one rainy night. Emily had been coughing all week, but Daniel told himself it was just a cold. He couldn't afford another doctor's bill. He wrapped her in blankets, gave her warm soup, kissed her forehead, pretending everything was fine. But that night, her little body burned with fever. She whimpered in her sleep, her small hands clutching her bunny as she tossed and turned. Daniel pressed a trembling hand to her forehead and felt the heat. Too hot. Much too hot. Panic clawed at his chest. He had seen combat. He had faced death. But nothing terrified him more than watching his daughter suffer. He rushed her to the his old truck groaning in the storm. Emily lay slumped in the backseat, whispering weakly, "Daddy, don't leave me. I'm right here, Bug. I've got you," Daniel said, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. At the hospital, they took her in immediately. Pneumonia, they said. She needed fluids, antibiotics, maybe even an overnight stay. Daniel's heart dropped at the cost, but he didn't care. "Do whatever it takes," he begged. Hours later, he sat in the waiting room, drenched from the rain, his hands shaking. His little girl lay in a hospital bed, hooked up to IVs, her small body too fragile against the sheets. And he felt utterly alone. But Olivia was about to find out. She had been at yet another board meeting, her mind wandering as suits argued about numbers, when her phone buzzed. A message from a number she didn't recognize. It was Megan, the hostess from the restaurant. "Thought you should know. Your server friend rushed his little girl to County General tonight. Looks bad. Figured you'd want the scoop." Olivia's stomach dropped. Her chair scraped loudly as she stood in the middle of the meeting. "Cancel my schedule. Now." Her assistant blinked. "Ms. Carter, you have." "Now." Olivia snapped, her heart pounding. Minutes later, her car sped through the rain, carrying her to the hospital. For the first time in years, she wasn't Olivia Carter, the CEO. She was just a woman desperate to reach the only people who had ever made her feel human. She found Daniel sitting in the hallway, his head in his hands. He looked up when she approached, his eyes bloodshot, his face pale. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Olivia whispered, "Daniel, I'm so sorry. I heard about Emily." His jaw tightened. "What are you doing here?" "I had to come," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, let me help." He shook his head. "I don't need your money." "It's not about money," Olivia said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's about Emily. About you. I care about her. About both of you." Daniel's shoulders slumped, the fight draining from him. He buried his face in his hands. "She's all I have, Olivia. If I lose her," his voice cracked, breaking her heart. Olivia knelt beside him, placing a hand on his arm. "You won't. She's strong, like her father. And you're not alone in this, not anymore." For the first time since his wife's death, Daniel let someone hold him as he broke. And Olivia held him, silently promising she would never let him carry it all alone again. Emily's condition improved slowly. The antibiotics worked, the fever broke, and within days her little voice returned, asking for apple juice and coloring books. When she saw Olivia at her bedside, Emily smiled weakly. "You came back." Olivia brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "Of course I did, sweetheart. I'll always come back." Emily's tiny hand slipped into hers, and Olivia felt something shift deep in her chest. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged. But the outside world was less forgiving. Photos of Olivia at the hospital leaked to the press. Headlines blared. Billionaire CEO seen comforting single dad and daughter in county hospital. Speculation ran wild. Was it charity? Was it romance? Was it scandal? Her board exploded in fury. "This is reckless, Olivia. Do you realize what kind of image this sends? You're aligning yourself with good people." Olivia shot back, her voice steel. "With a man who's honest and brave, and a little girl who deserves the world. If that's a scandal, then maybe I don't want your kind of image." Her board was stunned into silence. Daniel, however, struggled with his pride. When Emily was discharged, Olivia offered to cover the bills. Daniel refused at first, his jaw set stubbornly. "I won't let you buy your way into our lives." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "This isn't about buying anything, Daniel. It's about love. Don't you see? You don't have to do this alone anymore." He looked at her, really looked, at the woman who had sat at table 17, who had listened when no one else did, who had run to the hospital in the rain without hesitation. Slowly, his walls began to crack. And for the first time, Daniel let Olivia step fully into their lives. The weeks that followed were healing, tentative, but beautiful. Olivia joined them for simple dinners at Daniel's apartment, spaghetti, grilled cheese, pancakes for dinner just because Emily loved it. She helped with homework, laughed at Emily's knock-knock jokes, sat on the floor coloring with crayons. And at night, when Emily was asleep, she and Daniel would sit together on the worn couch. The silence between them no longer empty but comfortable, full of unspoken things. Yet both knew the world wouldn't let them be so simple forever. Olivia's board threatened her position, warning that her relationship with a commoner risked investors. Gossip columns speculated daily. Paparazzi lurked outside Daniel's apartment, hungry for a photo of the billionaire with the single dad. The pressure mounted. And soon, both Olivia and Daniel would have to make a choice. Love or reputation, heart or fear.